Matthew Brooks is with me. He's been a guest of the show and the podcast before. He is the executive director of the Republican Jewish Coalition, native Philadelphian, but now in D.C., and his new piece at Broad and Liberty is NAACP Fails to Stand Against Anti-Semitism in Philadelphia. Matt, first of all, welcome back to the show.
Chris, it is always great to be with you, and always great to at least virtually be back home in Philly.
You know, the last time you and I talked, it was about Temple and the journalist,
Lamont Hill.
Lamont Hill, I'm sorry, Lamont Hill.
No, what?
Yeah, Lamont. Whatever happened with that? Did you follow that?
Actually, he surprisingly, I don't know if he's become more sensitive to the topic and more understanding about why his comments have been so hurtful in the past, or he's just being very political. But he actually, to his credit, came out against Deshaun Jackson's comments, which I found. Well, first of all, I found Deshaun's comments repugnant.
Oh my gosh!
And as somebody who's a lifelong Philadelphia Eagles fan, it absolutely broke my heart. And in fact, my son, his very first Eagles jersey he ever bought was a Deshaun Jackson jersey. So that really hit home. And my son, who's now 17, wanted to throw his old jersey out, even though it was his first Eagles jersey. So, but he came out and rightfully so condemned Jackson's comments, and so certainly we're pleased to see that.
And not the reason I wanted to have you on today, but it does link. There's this thing among some black men in high-profile places that continues to rear its head, and it's this very specific anti-Semitic stuff, this pro-Nation of Islam stuff, and I don't have my hands firmly around how prevalent that is out there. Are these guys outliers or what?
Well, I do think they're outliers, but the bigger problem and what concerns us the most is that, people feel as if there's no filters anymore, Chris. I mean, people feel like they can just say this and say whatever they want and not be held accountable to it. And, you see Ice Cube, you see a bunch of the NBA players, you see Deshaun Jackson, you see Rodney Muhammad, who was the catalyst for the piece that I wrote as the head of the NAACP. Either they're totally ignorant, which I don't think is the case, or they just don't care and they feel like it's open season to say whatever you want about Jews, and it's really troubling. And what's encouraging, to me, is the pushback that we see. Because there's no question that anti-Semitism is on the rise, not just here in the U.S., but internationally, globally as well. Certainly in Europe, it's people are fleeing France and fleeing Belgium, and the Jews are leaving as fast as they can because they're very fearful for their lives there, and we see it in New York City where Orthodox Jews walk down the street and are randomly attacked and beaten in the street. Mayor de Blasio, I always used to say that Jim Kenney was the worst mayor in America. He may or may not be, but he's certainly he's certainly vying for the title with Bill de Blasio.
Yes.
And, de Blasio is allowing this rampant anti-Semitism to run on the streets. He wants to arrest Orthodox Jews for not wearing their masks, but isn't arresting folks who are beating Jews in the streets. So we have a real problem, and as I said, it is sad to see that a lot of these people feel like they are emboldened and able to speak these kind of anti-Semitic tropes without any kind of accountability. And so that's why I wrote the piece. I think it's outrageous that the NAACP nationally has not removed Rodney Muhammad from his position. The response within the NAACP community has been tepid at best. And the Jewish community historically, because we have been victimized by anti-Semitism, and we know the cancer of racism and bigotry and what it means, to our people, we have always stood for civil rights, and we have always stood up with the African-American community and other communities who have been oppressed. In standing up against racism and bigotry and hatred. And it's sad to see it's not reciprocal.
Yeah, it's a strange thing, Matt Brooks, who's with us today, the He's the executive director of the Republican Jewish Coalition. His piece at Broad and Liberty, NAACP fails to stand against anti-Semitism in Philadelphia. The controversy surrounds a post, and as you described it in your piece, it's a misattributed Voltaire quote, actually from an American neo-Nazi, alongside an anti-Semitic cartoon of a Jewish caricature clasping his hands and pushing down on a mass of people, a cartoon that's made the rounds on white supremacist sites for years. The post was repulsive. He removed it once he came under fire, claimed he didn't realize the image was offensive to Jewish people. It's bad enough that Tom Wolfe, who I think is one of the most radical Democrats out there, actually, although he doesn't look it, as Tucker Carlson calls him the slope-shouldered mediocrity. I just love it. He's the most unassuming radical Democrat out there, Tom Wolfe. And even Tom Wolfe said this guy should resign. So that's how bad it got for him.
Yep.
May I drill down a little bit on this? And I don't know how comfortable you are or able you are, because I think it's important to understand. I'm trying to understand where it comes from, earnestly. Not that I want to understand it in the sense of have compassion for it, but I've never understood it. You know, the classic kind of neo-Nazi, Hitler, the murder, the gassing, the extermination of the Jewish people. All of us have our hands around that. I don't culturally understand the Nation of Islam stuff, the Farrakhan stuff, the gravitating by Deshaun Jackson and other kind of luminaries. Some, not many even, you say it's a minority, fine. But some luminaries in the black culture in the United States who are famous or athletes who seem to be gravitating to Farrakhan. What is the message? What's the driver there? Is it any different than the rhetoric of Hitler? I mean, is there a difference? I'm just trying to understand where it comes from.
Yeah, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about this as well, and I will certainly defer to some of your future guests who are more scholarly and expert on this than I. But, if you read Farrakhan's teaching, I think a lot of it is rooted in the fact that they view Jews, because of the success that the Jewish community has had in our society, as being oppressors. They view them as victims of what they view as a Jewish cabal, a Jewish conspiracy, whether it's in banking or business or the media or elsewhere, that is, in their mind, rather than placing it where it rightly belongs, which is ironically the failed policies of the liberals and the left in this country, which has enslaved multiple generations of African Americans in poverty, who, by the way, it was only until Donald Trump came into office that black unemployment was the lowest in 50 years pre-COVID, and it was a conservative Republican who came in and worked to try and change the trajectory of blacks in the inner cities in this country and get them jobs and get them upwardly mobile. But having said that, they view I think Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam views, the Jewish community as having their hand on the black community and keeping them down, which obviously can't be further from the truth.
Which is strange to me, Matt, because, and again, I don't mean to be, I'm not being cute or even rhetorical. I'm genuinely, we're now in this era of Black Lives Matter where, Oprah, I just covered this yesterday on the show. She said that, whites need to just understand their white privilege. That if you're white, you're born privileged, and then that's that, and whites need to understand it. I'm trying to understand the difference. Like, if you're a Nation of Islam person, Are you more upset with Jews? Are you more upset with, quote, white privilege and the white devil? Is it one and the same? Are we different? Because I'm a white Christian. I'm not a white Jewish guy. I mean, does the Nation of Islam have a bigger beef with you or me?
That's a good question. I've actually gotten death threats from the Nation of Islam, so
yeah.
I don't know that
I haven't yet. So I guess that answers it.
I don't know that I'm the right spokesman for this, in terms of comparisons.
I just don't. The grievance stuff. The grievance stuff is always so confusing to me. Like, I don't know. I can't even figure out who they're angry with, because there's all this kind of subsect of grievance and these fissures of cultures, and they intrigue me only because I don't know where they come from, what they're rooted in, and how prevalent they are. Like I said, I think everybody understood what a Nazi was, but Nation of Islam it's a weird thing to me, and the people that gravitate toward it seem like outliers and weirdos to me, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's more prevalent than I realize.
Yeah, and I think there's another element as well at play, certainly with Farrakhan, and I think that has to do with, the U.S.-Israel relationship and Israel's role. Farrakhan travels to Iran and meets with the supreme leader, gets funding from the Iranians, clearly travels the capitals in the Middle East where, there's some really unsavory characters out there that Farrakhan pals around with, and obviously their antipathy and hatred toward Israel and to Jews, I think, plays into Farrakhan's narrative as well.
And the irony, Matt Brooks, you're the executive director of the Republican Jewish Coalition, and there is such a group because Jewish people in the United States still, sadly, overwhelmingly vote for Democrats. That's the irony, the very policies that I assume that the Sean Jacksons and the Rodney Muhammads and others, vote the same.
Yep. But as I said on your show before, that's changing. And every election we continue to chip away at the Democratic base. I am confident that, we're going to spend we've got the Republican Jewish Coalition has a $10 million budget plan for this election to help maximize the Jewish support for President Trump and his reelection effort. And I am confident that because this president has been the most pro-Israel president in history, because he has stood up and spoken out against anti-Semitism, because of what he is doing to lead the economy, to bring the economy back and get the jobs back and from where it was pre-COVID, that we're going to see an increase in the Jewish vote for him over where he was in 2016. And a lot of that's going to have to do not just with the president, but with where the Democratic Party is heading as it's pulled further and further left by the progressives, the Squad, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, AOC, that whole crowd is the new face of the Democratic Party. And it's a face of it's a Democratic Party in which Jews will feel increasingly uncomfortable in.
Well, I tell you, I know there's a great consortium of Republican Jewish folks here in Philadelphia. I've had the privilege of speaking with them, and that's how I got to know you. And they've always got friends and a home here. So, Matt, thank you for your time today. The piece again at Broad and Liberty: NAACP fails to stand against anti-Semitism in Philadelphia. Matt Brooks is the executive director of the Republican Jewish Coalition. You can find him on Twitter as well. Matt, thanks for your time today.
Chris, thanks for having me. Let's not, hopefully it won't be so long, and I'll look forward to talking to you again soon.